Ladies and gentlemen of the YouTube world, what is poppin', lockin', and what's droppin'? On this wonderful episode of recipes on the channel, we are going to be making some BBB, which means bourbon bacon Brussels, not the other inappropriate term that I know you were thinking about when BBB stands for. This recipe is probably one of my favorites to make, as well as to make for other people. I get lots of compliments about it. A little history about this is there is a saloon, I guess you would call it, but it's like a country bar that's around the area that I absolutely despise, that I went to back when it first opened. They actually have some pretty good food. Their food, I think now, is crap. But got these Brussels sprouts that they made, and they were pretty good. I was like, go ahead and try to recreate these. So I recreated them as best as I could, and they came out really good, really flavorful, and spectacularly delicious. So we're going to go ahead and present this recipe to my lovely viewers out there and my lovely subscribers and these glorious, beautiful individuals that took their time to watch my video, which I very do much appreciate every single one of you for doing that, so thank you so much. So I'm going to be going over the ingredients one by one, and I'll be describing how much you need and so on and so forth. Now, with the channel, this being like a weight loss channel, this recipe is not very healthy for you. I figure I warn everyone now. It is more for a tasty thing more than a macro and calorie thing, because this thing actually has a lot of calories in it. It takes something that's healthy and essentially makes it unhealthy. So it's going to be quite a bit of a difference here on the recipes, but the recipes I like uploading make it more for enjoyment as well as for macro and meal prepping purposes. So we'll go ahead and get that started. The first recipe we got on the chopping block is this right here. We got ourselves some Brussels sprouts. A small little bag would be fine. We're gonna be making 4 servings for this entire serving. So we're gonna have 1 bag, or specifically 1 pound, or 454 grams of Brussels. Next, we're gonna do is get ourselves some lovely, juicy, tender, delicious bacon. Now, this is thick cut applewood smoked bacon. You can use what kind of bacon you like, but I find for this recipe, this would be the best. Now, if you don't like thick pieces of bacon, then you can do thin cut and just make it more crispier, but I prefer my bacon to be a little chewier. So the thick cut, and then this type of smoke, it really doesn't matter. But I find applewood with the bourbon that I'm going to be using is probably just works best with it. Particularly, this is 1.5 pounds of bacon. So you can use a pound of bacon, but more bacon, more flavor. Now, before I go over this next ingredient, I just want to let everyone know that viewers that are 21 years of age and over can consume alcohol. Make sure you consume it responsibly. But anyone that is 20 years or under, make sure there is someone who is legal of age to be around alcohol, and make sure to drink responsibly if you decide to drink. But the next ingredient is the bourbon. Now, for this particular one, I have Jim Beam Black. So Jim Beam Black is my choice of bourbon, but you can use whatever kind of bourbon you like. You really don't need that much, because this bottle right here is $15. But any bourbon you like. Funny story about this: when I first made this recipe, this was the bourbon available at my parents' house, so this is what I just use ever since. Next ingredient we got is maple syrup. So this is Walden Farms 0 calorie maple syrup. This is fake syrup. If you want to use 100% maple syrup, I highly recommend doing that, but because I'm trying to lose weight, this is the only maple syrup I had. So this still has pretty good flavor to it, just 100% maple syrup will be more of a better choice. You can use the pancake syrup if you really like, but you get better flavor, use the 100% maple. Next ingredient we got on the list here is wonderful ground clove. So clove just goes really well with the bourbon and makes it more of a wintry fall type flavoring. So ground clove is something I would recommend using. The next ingredients that I would use in this are these 2 right here. So we got ground black pepper to my left, your right, and then we have thyme here on my right, your left. So fresh ingredients are more than recommended for this, but dry thyme is fine because it just hydrates when you put it into the liquid anyways. And last but not least, you're going to need yourself some butter. This is the butter I like using the most. The grass-fed is really good. It doesn't taste very chemically or whatever. So this is a particular butter that I use. I'll grab it from Walmart. Grass-fed, and it's really good. So you only need 2 tablespoons of it, nothing more than that, unless you really like butter. So But that's it for the ingredients, so I think let's go ahead and start prepping for the meal. Alrighty, so the first thing we're going to need is a cutting board and a sharp cutting knife for these next steps. So we go ahead, I got our Brussels sprouts here. I went ahead and washed them. Wash your fruits and vegetables before use. Just get all the extra dirt and whatever chemicals they use to keep the bugs away. So we're going to go ahead and go do that. So I'm going to be showing everyone how I particularly cut a Brussels sprout for this recipe. So first thing you're going to do, you're going to find yourself that little nub right there that attaches to the stem. And you're going to slice and dice at it. And then you get this. So that is trash. You know, you get these little extra leaves that pop out. You get crispy and they get really good for extra flavoring. So then you can cut them in halves, but I'd prefer to cut them in quarters. And the reason for that is because you get extra little crisps on each side, and the crisps on a Brussels sprout is what makes the flavor so splendid. And it gives a little bit of a better presentation, in my opinion, as well. So this is what the quarter Brussels sprouts would look like. For smaller ones, because they're different sizes, you can just cut them in half. But bigger ones, I usually cut them in sixes. So you want to try to get them all equal sizes, though. That's the most important thing. So once your Brussels sprouts are all cut up into quarters, you can put them in a bowl like a show and just set them off to the side. The next thing I'm going to be going into here is our bacon. So I'll be showing you guys how to get this bacon cut going. Wow. Or you can just peel it. That's probably your most ideal thing to do. And then trying to cut it with a unsuccessful knife. So once you got your bacon out like this, it's sliced, which is really nice. So all you're gonna have to do is just cut them into bite-sized pieces. So I'd say maybe about an inch or so. Just gonna go ahead and cut down like that, and you get your sliced pieces about that thick is what you would want. You don't want it too small, but not too big. So that's what we're gonna do for those bacon slices. So once you slice those up, you just set them to the side, and then we're going to move on to the next step. Alright, so the first thing you're going to do is crank that soldier boy up to high. You want this blistering hot. You want solar flares jumping out of this pan. You want it so hot. But when you do that, just be careful when you put your bacon in, as you do not get burned, or the grease also doesn't touch you and you go, and whatever. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put our mountain full of bacon onto this pan. Now, when you cook the bacon, it's pretty important to cook it not all the way through, but the objective is to actually get the grease out of the bacon. So you obviously want to cook it, but the goal here is to get the grease out of the bacon. One thing you can also do when you're cooking the bacon and rendering that fat down is to add a little bit of flavor. I like to sprinkle a little bit of black pepper on there, just to give it some extra flavoring. Not too much, just because we're going to be adding pepper to the sauce. Alright, so we got our bacon rendering out here, and a good consistency I like to have for the bacon is, again, I like it chewy, so if it's got focus, alright, it's dripping all over the place. So, but you can see it getting a little bit darker, but it's still a little bit flimsy. It's a pretty good consistency for me, because once you set it off to the side, it'll just still cook. So the next step is pretty important, because you do want to make sure you keep as much bacon grease in there as possible. So you get yourself a utensil with some holes in it. Just kind of scoop out the bacon, dribble it out a little bit, get as much grease out as possible. And then you want to get yourself a little plate, put the bacon on, and then just set it to the side. Perfect. So your pan should now be baconless. You might get a couple little tiny bits of bacon in there, but you know what, try to get us out best you can. So our next step is going to be kind of dangerous, so we'll let everyone know to be super cautious when you do this. It's probably best to reduce your heat a little bit, but you want to next add our Brussels sprouts to this. So the Brussels sprouts will be cooked in the bacon grease. So we're going to go ahead and just slowly add in a little bit at a time, and just be super cautious. It'll start popping, especially the little leaves you got over there. So, again, just be super cautious. It's probably going to take the bowl and just slowly pour it in there. Let it pop like popcorn, or let it cook a little bit, and then we'll move on to the next step. So once you safely get your Brussels sprouts into the pan, so you want to let the Brussels sprouts cook into the bacon grease. You want to don't stir as much. So you let it sit for about a minute, stir it for about 20 seconds, let it sit for about a minute. And so the goal is to get all the sides of the Brussels sprouts to be super crispy. So a good example is that. So you don't want super black edges, you don't want to burn it, but you want a good brown crisp to the Brussels sprouts, as that will give it flavor. So stir around, just kind of flatten everything out. Let it sit for about a minute just to get that crisp on the Brussels sprouts. We'll be back when that's done. Alright, so our Brussels sprouts are becoming that texture that we want. We want them to wilt a little bit, as well as get those crispy brown edges to it. So next thing we're going to be doing is you want to turn your heat down to a medium low, and you will want to let it sit and cool down for a little bit, because the next steps we're going to be doing, again, can be a little dangerous. So just I would turn down the heat a little bit, let it simmer a little for maybe 3 to 5 minutes, just to reduce the temperature in the pan down for that next step. So our Brussels sprouts are the consistency that we would want. Our next ingredient we're going to be adding is our Jim Beam Black here. To add this, be super cautious, because you're going to be adding a cold liquid or room temperature liquid to a very hot pan. So I would say about 4 shots of the Jim Beam. Add it slowly. So, and you want that kind of boiling, and mix that around a little bit. The goal here is to simply just take the alcohol out of the bourbon and let that flavor absorb into the Brussels sprouts. You'll definitely be smelling it in there. Shots. Now, after you cook it, the next ingredient you want to add in pretty quickly is the maple syrup. The reason for that is because the maple syrup will actually help track the flavor of the bourbon, and it'll create that caramelization style sauce. So the maple syrup, I just added half a bottle in there, and you want to stir that around like so. And with the low temperature, you want to let it sit and cook for a bit. On top of that, you do want to add your butter as well. Just kind of let that sit in there, melt for a little bit. Once that's melted, stir it back around. This is a slow process for cooking, and in particular for the maple syrup. So this is 12 fluid ounces. You want to add 6 fluid ounces to the dish of 100% maple syrup. So once that butter gets melted down, and we'll be stirring around, that'll be our next steps for that. After the butter has melted and you incorporate everything, and you start seeing the syrup to bubble here a little bit, you don't want to bubble like crazy. Just you do it, turn on the heat a little bit, because you want the sauce to cook slowly. The next thing we're going to be doing is adding our cooked bacon back into the pan here. And you're going to give that a nice little mix. Make sure you get all that bacon incorporated into the Brussels sprouts as well. So just give that a good little stirring around. Incorporate all that sauce to the Brussels and the bacon. Once that is done, we're going to go ahead and add our dry seasonings. So we're starting up here with some thyme leaves. I'd say not too much, maybe 2 tablespoons of your thyme. If yours are fresh thyme, then you can take the leaves off the stem by pulling it back on a fork. Next ingredient we're going to be adding is black pepper. You want to add as much as you would want flavor-wise, but you want to try to match the seasonings all together. So have a couple tablespoons of that as well. And last but not least, we got our ground clove here. Clove can be a little strong, so just be a little cautious. You get it from a jar like this, I'd give it about 8 to 10 taps, like that. And then once you get your dry seasonings together, you're going to go ahead and incorporate everything together. Stir as much as you can, spread out all that love, tenderest flavoring throughout this significant dish that I can show. And once that is spread around, you want to let it sit so all that flavor can marinate into it with that low heat. And then you'll be ready to serve for your loved ones, your friends and family, and whoever you want to serve it to. Alright, ladies and gentlemen of the YouTube world, we have finally completed the recipe. I want to do this. And this is what it looks like. But it's done. So that was 4 servings made. This is just one serving. I am not even gonna bother with the calories and macros because it's gonna be rough. So let's go ahead and give it a try and see how it tastes. Oh, here's the bite. Spectacular, magnificent, unbelievable, tremendous, absolute gorge. So this is a really good appetizer or like a side dish if you want to make it with like a big family meal or something. Really good for the winter and fall time, just because it has all that warm flavorings like the clove and the thyme. So something that would be really good with this is like a steak or maybe even like pork, duck. Anything that's really like fall, winter style dishes would be really good with this. I do not recommend doing this if you're on a diet though. Super unhealthy, especially if you use like 100% maple syrup with all the sugar in it, and you know there's a lot of bacon in this, so just be cautious. The Brussels sprouts, you know, that's kind of the only healthy thing on this. But if you want to make something pretty creative for anyone and try to impress them, this is highly recommended the dish to do it with. So I will say kind of step down on the clove a little bit if you don't like clove flavoring, because it does have a strong clove taste to it. But if you like clove, then 8 to 10 dashes is nice. If you're not a big fan of it, I'd say like 4 to 5 dashes of the clove. Kind of reduce a lot of that fatty flavor. You can remove the butter. I actually went from 2 tablespoons to 1 tablespoon of butter just because of all that butter flavoring. But that'd be it. Catch you guys later.